if you struggle to nurse, you're not alone. It doesn't mean that you're like incapable. It just means that it's a skill and you have to practice, and it takes a lot of practice. It's okay to feel discouraged, because I certainly did, and that's totally valid. And also know that like you're gonna be able to figure it out most likely, right? And if you don't, that's all right, right? You do what's best for you and your baby. Don't worry about other people's judgment.
Hey, welcome to the Mommas Lounge podcast, where we get real about the beautiful chaos of postpartum. I'm your host, Camille Perkins, and I'm happy you're here. We're all about authenticity, the highs, the lows, and the unexpected messy middles. We'll find strength in our faith, embrace our diverse experiences, and love without judgment. So, grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's chat.
Hello. Welcome to this episode of the Mommas Lounge. We today are going to be doing something a little bit different than I've done in the past. Usually I like to interview my friends or talk about like my own struggles postpartum. But today I wanted to take everything that I learned the first few months of postpartum and talk about it. And this is going to be a multiple episode series because we learn a lot when you become a mom. But I figured this would be so helpful for people who are about to become postpartum and haven't been before, or if you just want a reminder of all the things for postpartum because you're about to go into another one, or you're helping a friend. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. This first episode is going to be all about nursing, because really I think this is the biggest learning curve. There is so much to learn. You can't really perfectly know it all beforehand because it's easiest learned when you're doing it, you know? But it's also hardest learned because you have to like go through it. And nursing is difficult. It is a skill. It is something that you practice. And that's why I think it can be so overwhelming. So I'm hoping that me sharing kind of my story and tips and tricks and just things to know that the hospital didn't tell me will be helpful to people who are about to become postpartum. For those of you who are listening and you are about to become postpartum, I want to say congratulations. Your life is about to change and is about to become something greater than it is now. And it might be super hard, and I know that you're going to have moments of fulfillment and excitement with your baby, and it will become something that you will cherish. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I decided I wasn't just going to go through everything that I learned because that's kind of boring, and it also is hard to put things into context that way, so I'm going to share my story. And I'm going to share mostly just highlighting the nursing parts of my story. I still haven't yet shared my whole like birth story and all that stuff. But I mean, like everyone else's stories are really exciting, and I'll share mine eventually. So yeah, my nursing story starts right after you give birth, right? Your story with nursing starts as soon as you have your baby. And the reason is because once you have your baby, oftentimes, if there aren't any issues, they'll put the baby on your breast or on your chest. And I actually don't know if they tried to have the baby breastfeed right then or if they were just putting the baby on my chest. I was experiencing shock at the time, so I really don't remember it from my own head. I have pictures of the moments, and so I can like remember the pictures, and that can kind of help me give context to my head. But I really don't remember like specifics and stuff. But I do know that for me, I had my baby on my chest. I think it was for like an hour or something. I did like the whole golden hour thing where I just had my baby there with me. And I'm sure we tried to breastfeed in that time, but don't remember it. What I do remember is the postpartum period in the hospital. So depending on how well your delivery went and how you're doing with your body, they will have you stay in the hospital for up to 1 to like 5 days, depending on how you're doing. I stayed in the hospital. I had technically 2 days to stay, but I stayed for only like 32 hours or something after I gave birth. So I gave birth at 4:44 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, and then I left probably Thursday night. So I stayed all of Wednesday, all of Thursday, and left Thursday night, even though I could have stayed until Friday at 4:44 a.m. But I wasn't going to leave then, so we left Thursday night. So they wheeled me into a postpartum room, and immediately we started having nurses come in, educating you and talking to you. I'm sure it's required by law that they do this, and it was to an extent very helpful, but it also was so overwhelming. And I think that that's normal, right? Like if you just gave birth and like you're trying to learn how to take care of a baby, and in my case, I labored throughout the entire night. And so I was running on 0 sleep. Like I pulled an all-nighter giving birth and then wasn't allowed to sleep for an entire day because they had to educate me and help me and all that stuff. They ask you to, at least for me, I mean, I keep saying you because I feel like I'm talking to someone who's about to have a baby, but I'll try to keep it more focused on like me telling a story. So they asked me to breastfeed my baby every 2 hours and to try to get them to feed for as long as they could. And so I remember the first time, like, me in my postpartum bed, like, sitting up and trying to get Janie on my breast and just feeling so awkward. Not awkward that I was having a baby feed on my breast, but holding her. Like, I just having my arm underneath her and like trying to get my boob in her mouth, like without dropping her. Like, it's just such a learning curve. And I realized that I was getting into something that was not going to be just innate, right? Like, I always thought that breastfeeding would just be like kind of easy because, like, I don't know, women have been doing it for millions of years. But it wasn't the case. And it was also hard because she like really was struggling to latch, and she also was so sleepy. Like as soon as she would start sucking, she would just fall asleep. That was really stressful. And then the nurses would always say, try to hear her swallow and track how long she's swallowing for. And they would say that the little swallowing sounds sound like a little, and if I'm being honest, I never could hear it. There were times where they would like look at the baby and they'd be like, oh, I heard a swallow. And I'm like, I don't hear anything. And I think it's because I didn't know what I was looking for, and I was so tired and stressed, and who knows. So anyways, what's nice about hospitals is that they have lactation consultants on hand. I ended up seeing 3 different lactation consultants just because it's whoever is on shift. And so I would just kept asking for help because I really felt like Janie wasn't latching. And every time I tried to get her to latch, she'd like pop off or cry or fall asleep, and she wasn't eating. And so the nurses were pretty worried, and they asked if I wanted to supplement with formula or donated breast milk. And I had never heard of donated breast milk. I didn't know that was a thing. And so I was like, I'll just do formula. But looking back, I totally wish I had done donated breast milk. I think that's super cool. But anyway, so I did formula, and it was great. So we would just try to breastfeed her first for, 20 to 30 minutes. And then if it wasn't working, then we would supplement with formula, and we would just do that every 2 hours. So that was kind of my experience at the hospital. I will say the lactation consultants, to me, felt frustrating and not helpful to me. And that is not because of them. It is because of the mental state I was in and how tired I was. I think I was just really easily irritable, stressed, freaked out, overwhelmed, overtouched, and worried that I wasn't speaking my needs. And so I'm trying to think about my needs. Yeah, so I remember leaving the hospital and thinking I don't ever want to see a lactation consultant again. That was so stressful. They weren't helpful. They didn't help me with my baby and figuring it out at all, But looking back, they did everything that a normal lactation consultant would do, and they were very friendly. The things that they tried to help me with is there was one lactation consultant that taught that you can kind of train a baby's tongue to move properly by putting your finger upside down in their mouth and kind of rotating it like this. If you're listening and not watching, then you have no idea what I just did. But I'm kind of moving my pinky in a circular motion as if I was touching the top of our mouth. And that can kind of help the tongue learn how to have a better sucking motion and suction. So that was one thing. And then another thing that they taught me was nipple shields. A nipple shield is a silicone fake nipple, basically, that's see-through that you put onto your breast. And when your baby sucks on it, it helps suck your nipple into the shield. I just want to say reasons you would use a nipple shield. There's quite a few different reasons, and I mean, you can look into it, of course, using Google or talk to your lactation consultant. But for me, I needed to use it because Janie couldn't latch without it. She just wouldn't stay on my breast by itself. So the nipple shield really helped it kind of be more like a bottle, and that helped her to latch more efficiently. It still wasn't perfect, but it was helping. And they just tried to really teach me how to hold her because I think I was really struggling to hold her properly. I have very short arms. most people have longer arms than me compared to like their body. And because of that, I couldn't get my hands all the way around her even as an infant. But now I figured it out now, and Janie's like older and a pro, so it's much easier for her to nurse even if I'm not even holding her. She's like figured it out. But yeah, so that was kind of a weakness of mine. So anyways, all of this to say, if you struggle to nurse, you're not alone. It doesn't mean that you're like incapable. It just means that it's a skill and you have to practice, and it takes a lot of practice. It's okay to feel discouraged, because I certainly did, and that's totally valid. And also know that like you're going to be able to figure it out most likely, right? And if you don't, that's all right, right? You do what's best for you and your baby. Don't worry about other people's judgment. Okay, I kind of got off the rails there. Something really important happened in the hospital with my nursing journey with Janie. I think it was maybe after 2 or 3 times of trying nursing and just looking at her and looking at her tongue. And her tongue had this very, like, bowed shape. When she tried to stick out her tongue and cry, the tip of her tongue would indent inwards. And the sides of her tongue would kind of bulge outward, so it looked kind of like, an M almost. And I didn't have any education about tongue ties before this, but I knew that Drew had a couple of tongue ties in his family. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh, she probably has a tongue tie. And so I remember asking the nurses, like, do tongue ties affect nursing? I had no idea, but I think the nurse was like, yeah, like, I've heard that that's a possibility. Maybe you should talk to your doctor about it. So my first doctor came in, and I told him, I was like, hey, like, can you look at her tongue? Like, I think there might be a tongue tie, and I think that's why we're struggling to nurse. Like, she's not latching, and we're just not figuring this out. And I think the way that he saw it was, I'm a brand new mom who just hasn't practiced yet, and I'm trying to put the blame on the baby instead of on my inability to nurse, which I can totally see and is totally like normal logical thinking, honestly. And he didn't even check. And so I was pretty disappointed in that doctor, and I haven't gone back to see him. But he was like, oh, like, tongue ties actually aren't a big deal. Like, they don't affect nursing. That's just a myth. Like, it's not a huge deal. Your baby should be just fine. And I remember thinking, like, I just felt weird about it. And, like, my gut told me, like, no, like, the tongue tie is pretty severe. You should probably get it looked at. So anyway, so that doctor otherwise was really nice and kind, and he left eventually. And then the next day, Thursday morning, before we left, a different pediatrician came in. And I asked her the same question, said, hey, like, the other doctor said it's not a big deal, but she has a tongue tie, and, like, her tongue is bowed, and she can't get her tongue past her lip. And I think that might be affecting her latch. And then this pediatrician was like, oh, yeah, like, actually, that is a big thing. There's a lot of, more recent research that shows that releasing tongue ties is actually very helpful. I can look at it and see if it's an issue. So she went and looked, and she said, yes, your baby does have a pretty severe anterior tongue tie. It was anterior and posterior. And she was like, I can just cut the posterior part of the tongue tie, but I cannot cut the anterior part. A dentist has to. So I decided, the pediatrician left, and me and Drew talked about it. And I was like, I think we should do it, because she's only going to get older. And the older she is, the more painful it's going to be, because, like, she's going to understand what's going on. Like, I'd rather do it while she's a baby. Like an infant, like just born, So we went ahead and got the pediatrician to just go ahead and she had like this little tool that held back her lip and her tongue, and she just cut the tie, the anterior one, which means the front part of the tie, right? And Janie cried for maybe a minute and then stopped crying. And she was just fine, and we nursed immediately afterwards. And already her latch was getting better. I will say, though, with her not crying for very long, Janie has always been that way. She's just always been a super tough girl. I remember we gave her vaccinations a couple months ago, and she didn't even cry. And that's, like, not normal for a child. She's just really tough. So if for some reason you think that your baby has a tongue tie, just because my baby didn't cry doesn't mean that your baby could. Anyways, now she was, like, actually staying on my breast and actually nursing. Like, I could hear the swallows now. But she also would keep popping off and stuff. And I remember telling my pediatrician, and she was like, well, she does have an anterior tie, so you might want to look into that if she doesn't keep nursing better. So anyways, all that to say, we ended up going home, and for about a month, we nursed. Not well, but we nursed. We came home. It was pretty obvious that her latch was still struggling. We had to use a nipple shield to get her to stay on and get her to actually feed. And while we waited for my milk to come in, we would supplement with formula. But then once my milk came in, which by the way, your milk coming in is such a crazy experience. Like, it's wild. Like, your breasts just fill up with milk and they get so huge. And you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening to my body? But it's not permanent. They do not stay that big. That is a wild experience. So be excited for that. It is also very painful. They're just so big and tender, and like, you just don't want anyone to touch you. So I would definitely say when it comes to visitors, like, maybe wait until after your milk comes in, or before. I'd probably wait till after, and that you've regulated your milk for like maybe a couple days, and then have guests come over, because it is so awkward to have guests over when, like, I don't know. For me, it was just so awkward because like my breasts were like 5 times their normal size, and it was painful, and like they all want to give you hugs and you're like, don't hug me. So I mean, do what's best for your family, but like for me in the future, I'll probably say let's wait a week, and then I'll have visitors. Like, anyways, so yeah. So before a woman's breast milk comes in, they have what is called colostrum that the baby is able to get out, and that stuff is like miracle fluid. And when you're at the hospital pumping and at home pumping before your milk comes in, that's what you're trying to get out, because that is super good for your baby. And it's really hard to get out. Your baby does a better job at getting it out than your pump does, but they'll give you, if they don't give you one, ask for like a little tiny syringe with a little tiny tip that you can like suck the colostrum out of the pump, and then you can feed your baby with the syringe. That's what we did for a while. Okay, so sorry if telling that story was a bit of a mess. Honestly, that's how it felt. Trying to process everything those first like 3 days postpartum is so overwhelming, like it's just, there's so much going on and you're trying to figure it all out, and it's a lot. So telling my story probably wasn't all that helpful for you, but here's hopefully some of the better stuff. So we came home, my milk came in, which means we could finally like breastfeed, pump with milk, and then feed her with a bottle with breast milk instead of with formula. One tip for if you're going to be using formula, the hospital gives you those little like bottles of formula. They gave us a couple of 4-packs. It says that once you open one that you have to throw away what they don't drink, but my nurse told me that that isn't true. So what she would do is she just said, when you open one of those little bottles, pour out half of it into another bottle and screw on the lid and put it in the fridge, and then just make sure you use that one within the same day. And that saved us so much formula in those little baby bottles that are like pre-formula made, because then we weren't like throwing one away every single time. So we just did that. So that's one tip. The next thing that I learned that I just want to share, because I did not hear about it in the hospital or from anyone until it was, like 3 weeks later and I was in a whole heck of a lot of pain. You can't just use any old nipple shield. You have to use one that is the correct size. So everyone has different size of nipples. Surprise! Like, I don't know why I never made this connection. I always thought that maybe everyone had like around the same size of nipple, but that is not true. I apparently, compared to most people, have very, very tiny nipples, apparently. So I was so confused why my pumps flanges, like my pumps and the nipple shield was so big. And the pump flange was so big compared to my breast. And I was always like, okay, like, I guess this is normal. Like, no one told me, right? And the nurses even in the hospital didn't tell me. So anyways, after about 3 weeks of breastfeeding Janie, she was still really struggling to latch. And so I was still using a nipple shield that the hospital gave me. And I decided that I wanted to buy my own, because just having one was starting to get annoying, because I'd have to like wash it and Janie's like crying and I just wish I had one more. So while I was shopping on Amazon for nipple shields, I discovered that they sell different sizes of nipple shield. And I was like, oh, like My nipple shield is too big. I need one that actually fits. I have a friend who had given me electric breast pumps, like the wearable ones, and it came with a nipple sizer. And I went ahead and measured myself, and yeah, it was like 5 sizes too big. So I went ahead and bought a nipple shield that actually was my size, and it was incredible the difference that it made for my pain level and also for Janie's latch and how it was working. She still was struggling after using it, but like it was a lot better. And so then I finally made the connection, oh my goodness, my pump is too big too. Like the size of the plastic parts of the pump is too big. And so I went and found the wearable pump that I hadn't used yet because I thought that the one that the hospital gave me was like nicer. And it came with flange sizes that are like silicone that you can insert into the pump and change the size of your flange. So anyways, then I went ahead and started using the correct size of flange. And I've learned later now that I've been doing this for a while, you don't want to use your exact size. You want to use one that's maybe 1 or 2 sizes bigger because you want your areola to be sucked in to the pump a little bit. Not the whole thing, but it's just like when your baby breastfeeds, your baby doesn't just get your nipple, your baby gets the nipple and your areola, or at least a part of it. So when you're pumping, you want your nipple and a little bit of your areola. Anyways, I went ahead and found the right flange sizes, put those on my pumps, and guess what? I went from pumping like, I don't know, maybe half of an ounce on both sides to like 4 ounces on both sides by just changing the flange pieces. So that made a huge difference for me. So definitely size yourself. Also, so I've been breastfeeding for 11 months now, and I went ahead and checked my sizes again because I tried pumping and I wasn't getting anything out. And yeah, my nipple size had grown a little bit since the beginning. And I think that just comes with like your breasts change over time as they continue to adapt to the breastfeeding of your baby. And it's just amazing what our bodies are capable of. So anyways, I went ahead and went a size up in my flange size, and I'm pumping better again. Figured that out this last month. I was so stressed because I wasn't pumping like anything, and then that helped a little bit. Oh, and my baby needs me, so I'm going to pause recording. But coming up next is we're going to be talking about pumping and what was helpful with me with pumping besides the flange sizes, and then protein bites and how amazing they are, and then all of the tongue tie stuff that we did with Janie, and then, oh, milk blebs and how awful those are. So I'll be back here in a second. Okay, I'm back. Janie has been fed and is asleep, napping in her little crib. Okay, so while we're on the topic of like pumping, I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about pumping and what I understand. I don't understand a lot about pumping because I don't pump very much. I pumped the first 2 months, but then after that, once Jenny became a better feeder, I just literally only ever pump when I need a babysitter. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So my biggest question when I was postpartum was, how often am I supposed to pump? When am I supposed to pump? Why do I pump? Like, what is pumping? Like, what, why? How, why, what, when, you know? And the things that I've learned are, it's really a lifestyle choice, and it also needs to match what your lifestyle is like. So for example, if you know that you're not going to be home all the time, if you would prefer to have a lot of milk in the freezer so that you're prepared for any time a babysitter would come, if you know you're a working mother, whatever the case, if you know that you won't be there to feed your baby and nurse your baby 24/7, then you're probably going to be pumping quite a bit. For me personally, I've decided to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm with my baby 24/7, and every now and then I'll get a babysitter, but it's really not that often. And because of that, there really isn't a reason to be pumping all the time. So I don't pump at all. I pump maybe once a month when I need a babysitter. So if for some reason I decide to get a job eventually, I still haven't decided, but if that was the case, then I would start pumping more, and it would take a while, but the more you pump, the more milk you express, the more you produce. So that's the biggest principle that I want to talk about is before having my own baby, I didn't understand pumping and all that stuff. All I saw about pumping was people on Instagram. I would see people holding these massive bottles of pumped milk or these massive bags of pumped milk and be like, I pump a gallon a day, and like, this is crazy. Like, no one told me how much pumping would take over my life, like, all this stuff. And so I really believed that I was supposed to be pumping like 10 ounces. And when I was only pumping 1 ounce, 2 ounces, I was freaking out. I thought I wasn't feeding my baby enough milk, and I was really worried. But all my fears were put to rest when I went and saw a lactation consultant, which is later in my story. But I was producing plenty of milk. So when you decide what you're going to be doing with pumping, honestly, you're not going to really be able to decide until you're there and you know your situation, or if you know you're going to be working. So, for example, if you're going to be working a lot, then you're going to be pumping a lot more so that you can have the milk, right? And not just have the milk, but so that you can produce more milk. Because you can nurse and then pump more, and because you have nursed and then pumped more, you're going to produce more milk. So really the question is, do you want to have just enough for your baby, a little bit more than your baby needs so that you can have a milk supply, or do you want to have like a power pumped supply, which is like a freezer full, like bags and bags and bags of milk? What's your lifestyle choice? Like, how do you want to live your life? And that's based on circumstance, right? So for me, I only need just enough, so I don't pump. You know, you're gonna have babysitters once, twice a week. You're probably going to be pumping every day, just once or twice, so that you can have a freezer stash. If you're going to be exclusively pumping or power pumping so that you can donate breast milk or whatever the reason, then you're probably going to be pumping a lot, and you're going to be pumping for longer periods of time so that you can tell your breasts, I want to make more milk, and then they will make more milk because they're expressing more milk or being told to express more milk, even if they can't yet. Also, of course, don't compare your pumping situation to other people's pumping situations / your breastfeeding situation to other people's breastfeeding situations. I would hope that listening to this podcast and previous episodes, you've noticed that the most important thing to recognize as a mother is you do what's best for you and your kid, because that's where your responsibility is, and that's where your life is in your own and not in other people's. So I pumped a lot at the beginning of my breastfeeding, or at the beginning of Jeannie's life, because I was trying to manage my milk supply and get it to where I wanted it to be. And we were also trying to figure out why she wasn't breastfeeding well. So I pumped all the way up until she finally figured out nursing, and I finally figured out nursing. And once we figured it out and we didn't have any more nursing problems, I pretty much dropped the pump completely. But I probably used the pump for a month and a half because we were still struggling with making sure she was getting enough milk because her latch just wasn't working. And we were also experimenting with when Drew would wake up and feed her and when I would wake up and feed her. After like 2 weeks of us like switching on and off, I just decided that if I was going to figure out breastfeeding, I needed to be doing it every single time. And that was just what I felt. That doesn't have to be the case, right? Like how you do night feedings and stuff, up to you and your husband or partner. But for me, I just felt like I wanted to make sure that I was offering the breast every single time to give her enough practice. So after about 2 weeks, I woke up every single time she woke up to feed her and to practice feeding with her. And that was a fever dream. Like, you're just so exhausted. And it was probably anywhere from every hour to every 2 hours, or 4 hours. It just kind of depended on how she was doing. But most of the time it was like every 2 hours, pretty much like on the clock. So I will say something that helped me so much with those night feedings were what are called protein bites, and Drew's mom, Joyce, made them for me. And let me tell you, they are life-saving. They are the best. I gave them to my friend Brooklyn too. And man, like, seriously, if you can find yourself a good protein-heavy, really yummy snack for 3 a.m. that's like bite-sized that you can eat while you're breastfeeding or while you're recovering from breastfeeding to just give you a quick boost of calories, do it. I would just look up like oatmeal protein bite. It's usually like oatmeal, peanut butter, flaxseed, honey, chocolate chips, other good yummy, protein powder, you know, like good stuff like that. And then some kind of dried fruit. Like I had dried apple slices once in mine and it was really good. But oh my gosh, it was so life-saving. I just remember sitting in my chair and breastfeeding Janie and just being like, Drew, give me water. And he'd like hold me water and I'd like drink water and then I'd be like, I need food, I'm starving. Like it was the craziest, overwhelming feeling of absolute hunger and thirst. And that lasted for probably 4 months. Like every time I would feed, I'd be like, holy crap, I am so thirsty. I am so hungry. And I think it's just your body is using your calories that you're eating to make breast milk. And your body knows that it needs water to keep it going. And anyways, so be ready for that. Definitely make sure you have your water bottle full of ice cold water or whatever temperature of water you like. And keep yummy, healthy, protein, calorie-rich snacks next to you so that you can eat them and survive. Yeah, so that is a big tip. Okay, so that's like the first month, right? Where I'm pumping and then giving Janie breast milk through first my breasts and then pumping and giving it to her through a bottle to make sure that she's getting enough food because she wasn't eating for very long. She's only eating for like 5 to 10 minutes at a time, and I was going through waves of pain. I'd have some weeks where I was in a lot of pain even though I was using a nipple shield, and then some weeks where I would have less pain but it was still painful. And this is definitely something to understand. Breastfeeding in general as a whole should not be painful. If you and your baby are doing it correctly, it should not be painful. However, it likely will be, and there are lots of reasons for that. Many of the reasons are because, again, it's a skill. You have to practice it and your baby has to practice it to get a good latch and for you to like get in a comfortable position and have less stress when you're feeding so that you can kind of let your body get into the mood, I guess, to feed. If you're really tense, it can make it easier for your nervous system to sense pain even if there isn't. And then, of course, lip and tongue ties might be a problem. That can make it hurt. Your pump, if your pump is too big or too small, right, then you could be giving yourself nipple damage. That can make nursing hurt. Or maybe you're even experiencing thrush, which is a yeast infection of your nipple, or mastitis. But it's probably most likely a shallow latch and a lack of practice. And that usually gets better within 4 weeks. I would also say your nipples have to get used to it. Like, this is a brand new thing. Like, your nipples have never been like tugged on before like that with that much pressure from a baby, and it's just new. It's scary, and so that might be part of it, but you should get pretty used to it. And after 4 weeks it really shouldn't hurt anymore if it's just your nipples getting used to it. If after 4 weeks it hurts, there's likely another problem, like their latch or tongue ties or whatever. So for me, after about a month, I remember I was sitting in my chair and Drew was holding my hand and I was nursing and I was wincing in pain, biting a towel, like clenching my fists and crying and I was in so much pain. It was so painful. And Drew was like, you need to go see a lactation consultant. And I was like, no, like I hated the lactation consultants at the hospital. Like it was so annoying and like I felt like they just shoved my baby on my boobs and like weren't talking to me. They were just like trying to like get the baby to do it and like not teaching me what to do. And I just was like, no, like the lactation consultant, that was awful. He was like, you're in pain, like something's wrong, we need to figure it out. And I was like, okay. I also think her posterior tongue tie is causing an issue too. Like we should go get it checked out. So I scheduled to go see a dentist, and then I scheduled a lactation consultant a couple days after that. We went and saw the dentist so that he could just do a consultation to look. And sure enough, he was like, yes, she has a posterior tongue tie. It's not super bad, but it's bad enough that it might be affecting it. And she actually has like a moderate, like more than mild, but not quite severe lip tie up on the top. And so he was like, the lip tie is not usually too much of an issue with breastfeeding, but can be because the lip won't go up and it can cause suction issues. And it also is a problem later in life when they're, 5-6 years old. That lip tie can affect the sizing of the gaps between their teeth, and that could affect your whole jaw. And so he was like, it's probably best to get that done. And then also, of course, I can do the tongue tie, the posterior tongue tie, because it is there. And so I was like, okay, I will go think about it. So I left, thought about it, and decided this is what I want to do. we went and did it. And it was so sad to watch them hold my baby's head and, laser it off, and she's screaming. It was really scary. It was awful, and I cried my eyes out. It was really hard to see her in that much pain. But like she always does, after about 5 minutes, she stopped crying and fell asleep. And no joke, that day she was breastfeeding better. I was in less pain within a day because, my breasts have been getting bruised and stuff by her shallow latch. But seriously, the next day it was already better. And then I decided to also see a lactation consultant to make sure that she was getting enough milk, because again, she was only feeding for 5 to 10 minutes. And most of my friends are like, yeah, it takes me 20 to 30 minutes to feed my kids. And I was like, my baby doesn't feed that much. So I was kind of freaked out. So we went to a lactation consultant, and I was still struggling to feed her a little bit. She'd still kind of pop off and stuff. And so she went ahead and observed me feeding her. And she was like, okay, tell me when you'll let down. And a letdown is when the milk kind of after your baby sucks for a while, your breasts are like, oh, okay, it's time to send the milk in. So they open the floodgates, and then all the milk comes through. And after, 5-8 seconds, I was like, okay, I'm letting down, I can feel it. And she was like, okay, you have a very fast letdown. And I was like, do I? She was like, yes. And it was about at that second where Janie started, trying to pop off and kind of crying and stuff. And she was like, okay, go ahead and take your baby, and here's a Boppy pillow. And she showed me how to use a Boppy pillow. And then she had me get in this chair, and she had me lean all the way back, recline, all the way back in my chair. And then we tried breastfeeding again. And that was the first time in my life where I had no pain, no issues, a perfect breastfeeding session. And it was so relieving. And it chalked up to, she had a tongue tie, and it helped a ton to get rid of that tongue tie because she could actually latch. And then, because we'd gotten rid of that tongue tie, my letdown became incredibly fast and strong because she was with a stronger latch. I was letting down much quicker, faster, better. And so that was freaking Jenny out, and she was choking on my milk. But with the recline and with the Boppy pillow, I was able to hold her easier since I had such short arms, I was able to hold her easier. It wasn't as strenuous. And I could relax, and she could relax, and we could just breastfeed. And it was awesome. So that's kind of that whole story. Things I learned from that story that I just said that I think could be helpful to you is learn how to use a Boppy pillow correctly. I had the Boppy pillow before I even had Janie, but I didn't use it because the first few times I tried to use it, I didn't understand how it was supposed to fit around me because it's such a tiny, Boppy pillows have such a tiny hole, and I was quite a bit bigger, and it wouldn't fit around me at all. It literally, there was no way I was going to stretch that thing all the way around and hook it around my tummy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so lame. It's discriminatory against, people who are bigger. But that wasn't the case. I was just using it wrong. It's not supposed to fit around your waist. It's supposed to create a bow and arrow shape around your body. So you stretch it and you put it on the best you can, but it's probably not going to fit around you, and that's fine. And it's going to create 2 little bumps right here. And what it does is it creates a space for your arm to rest with her head or his head, and legs to rest easier. So it's not supposed to go, all the way up against you. There's going to be a space between the Boppy pillow and you, and that's where your baby goes, is kind of in that space. And you can kind of put your arm right there in that space. So that's how to use a Boppy pillow correctly. And that really changed my breastfeeding experience. And then go see a lactation consultant after being in the hospital and after you've had some practice, because when you're being told by a lactation consultant how to do it in the hospital when you're tired and haven't had any practice, you really don't understand what they're saying. It's just hard to know what's going on because you don't know anything about it. You don't know anything about breastfeeding. But once you've had practice, you kind of get it a little bit better, and you're not as, sleep deprived. You're a little bit sleep deprived because postpartum, but it's not like you've pulled an all-nighter. Anyways, seeing a lactation consultant after the fact, a month later, was so much better. And then I learned a lot about lip and tongue ties. There's some controversy around lip and tongue ties. I've done a little bit of research, and a lot of people worry that it's overdiagnosed and that babies are getting their whatever that's called. It's the thing that attaches your tongue to the bottom of your mouth. That they're getting that lasered away for no reason. And that's just more pain for babies that doesn't need to be happening. And I agree, like if your baby doesn't have a tongue tie, you probably shouldn't be getting it clipped. But I do think that that doesn't mean that we shouldn't ever clip tongue ties. Do you know what I mean? So there's two different kinds of tongue ties. There's an anterior tongue tie and a posterior tongue tie. Janie happened to have both. The anterior tongue tie is when there's a piece of skin attaching the front of the tongue to the front of the teeth. And then the anterior tongue tie is just the normal part that most of us have that attach the bottom part of the tongue to the bottom of your mouth, is just thicker and longer than usual. Or not longer, shorter, sorry. And so the tongue can't come up from off the bottom of your mouth. So I think it's worth getting it checked to see if they have a tongue tie because you're struggling to breastfeed. And if they don't, then they don't. But if they do, then you can make a decision if you want to get that cut or not. If you're not having any problems, then there's probably not a reason to. And the other thing that I learned from going to the lactation consultant was that Janie was totally getting enough milk. We weighed her before I fed her and after I fed her, and even though she breastfed for only 5 minutes, she got almost 4 ounces of milk, which is a lot for only 5 minutes. So she just happened to be a very efficient feeder, which has been honestly a blessing because having really, really long feeds is really difficult. It takes up your whole life. So that is that story. You would think after that, okay, she figured out breastfeeding, it's all good. It's all going to be smooth sailing, right? Yes, mostly, but I think it was around month 4, month 4, I got what is called a milk bleb or a milk blister. This is when a pore of your nipple gets clogged with like really thick dried up milk fat, basically. And it looks like a little white dot on your nipple that doesn't go away. And it is incredibly painful. So painful. And I remember when my breast started to hurt and it got a little bit more engorged than usual. And then I was like, why does it hurt so bad? I remember like looking at it and there's like this white dot and it wasn't going away. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? So, looked up on Reddit for a couple of hours and figured out, oh, it's a milk bleb. So it was super painful. It took about 2 weeks for it to go away. They're not super common. I've talked to a couple of my friends and they've never had one. So, like, you probably won't get one, but if it does happen, here you go. Now you know what it is. And things that I did to get it to go away was I would bathe my breast in Epsom salt and water to get it to stay really soft. And then I would keep lanolin on it and I would use silverettes. And that helped a ton. So this is my shout out to silverettes. If you don't know what they are, silverettes are round cup plates made of sterling silver, and silver has healing properties, and it also shields your nipple from rubbing on your clothes and just experiencing further irritation. And then if you also, you can soak your nipple in your own breast milk or in lanolin, and then when you put the silverette on, it just kind of keeps it wet and moist so that it can heal faster, easier, better. And let me tell you, those helped a ton. Anytime I've had any kind of injury or cracked nipples or whatever, using silverettes has helped a ton. It heals it much quicker than just on its own and protects you from feeling pain throughout the day. So some people say you can try to pop a milk bleb by taking a sterile needle and like picking at it and trying to get the milk fat to come through by nursing. When I did that, it just made it hurt worse and it didn't work. It still took like 3 or 4 days for it to finally go through, but I kept nursing throughout that whole time because I just was afraid of Janie like forgetting how to nurse. And honestly, nursing was what was supposed to get the milk bleb out. That's just what was going to be strong enough to get it out. So we got through it. We got through that painful road, but we did it. So after the milk bleb, honestly, nursing has been easy peasy since then. Until a couple days ago, my cute 11-month-old Janie she's almost 11 months, she finally got a tooth in, like 3 weeks ago. She finally popped in a tooth, and let me tell you, she bit me. And she's never done that before, and I bled. And it hurt so bad. I yelped, I screamed, ow, and I kind of like, pushed her away, sat her up and was like, don't bite me. Don't do that. And since then she hasn't bit me, but I've always been afraid of being bit and it was painful, but I never thought about like the healing process after. It's been 2 or 3 days. I don't even know how long it's been. And it is so painful because it's just like a milk bleb. It's an injury inside of your nipple and there's just so many nerves right there and it just hurts so bad. So anyways, I currently am wearing a silverette and lanolin and breast milk. And I'm trying to get it to heal. But nursing her definitely is painful right now. So nursing has its ups and downs. It can cause a lot of pain, but the pain won't last. It should go away. There's just different phases of injury or whatever. I will say, though, for me, nursing is the best option because I have less dishes, right? I don't have to clean any bottles. I can nurse her anytime because I happen to be home all the time, and it saves me money, right? I don't have to buy formula. So that's why, for me, nursing has been the best option. But like I said, it's okay that whatever option works for you is what works for you. So I hope that this was helpful. If I can just review really quick all the things that helped me. So silverettes, I can maybe find a link and put it in the show notes of this podcast, but they're just, like I said, that silver plate. They're on Amazon. You want to make sure that you get a silverette that is actually silver. I've noticed there's some really, really cheap ones on Amazon that I think are fake dupes that aren't actually made of silver or just plated with silver. And those might work a little bit, but I'm kind of skeptical. I really think that you're going to want a pure silver. It's around anywhere from $30 to $60 for a pair of 2 of them. And then a nipple shield. I can tag also the brand that I used. So nice. Loved them. I used them every single day for probably, 2 months. So we eventually weaned Janie off of her nipple shield. I weaned her after that lactation consultant meeting that I had. It was super easy, awesome. So she just told me to wean her off slowly. So I would start with the nipple shield, and then after 2 minutes, I would take the nipple shield off and then put Janie back on my breast, and she would breastfeed just fine without it. So we did that all the way up until just 10 seconds, and then would take it off, and then eventually she just started to breastfeed great. So we weaned her off of that nipple shield. And that was something that super helped me, that could help you if your baby's struggling to latch, if you have an inverted nipple, because that is a thing, or if it's painful, it can help too. And then lanolin, I've mentioned that a couple times. In my experience, the actual lanolin brand is the best one. At the beginning of my breastfeeding journey, had been using Great Value lanolin, and I don't know what they do differently, but it is not good. It's super stiff, and you have to rub it on your sore nipples, and it is not good. The purple lanolin brand, you rub it between your fingers, and it just melts and turns into an oil almost, and you can just rub it, and it feels better. It feels lighter and works better, if I'm being honest. So for me, I was just trying to save money, but honestly, if there's going to be something you're going to spend money on, it's probably at least 1 tube of real lanolin, right? And I've bought 1 tube of it, and I haven't even gotten all the way through it, and I'm almost a year after postpartum, so it's not like you're going to go through tons of that stuff. Okay, Boppy pillow, super helpful. And then, of course, for us, we lasered or cut, whatever you want to call it, her lip and tongue ties. Oh, and then, of course, sizing of your flange for pumping and sizing of your nipple shield. Also super important. But yeah, so that's everything that helped me. Hopefully this is helpful to you. It's going to be different for everyone. Your nursing journey is going to be different from mine, from your neighbors. And hopefully as we share our stories, we can just kind of understand what's best for us better. So I wanted to end with a scripture. This is my favorite scripture. I don't know if I have shared it on this podcast before. Honestly, I probably have. But it's because it's gotten me through a lot. And honestly, I think it helped me get through my breastfeeding pain and journey a little bit because it was so hard. But anyway, so this is Mosiah 24 in the Book of Mormon. And There are a people who want to worship God, but their ruler over them doesn't want them to worship. And he's like kind of putting a lot of burdens on them and making them slaves, basically. So in my context, I'm reading this like breastfeeding is so hard. Being a mom is so hard. Can you hear my baby crying? Oh. Janie! I don't know if Drew's gonna bring her in. Being a mom is so hard, and like I'm just like really struggling. How am I supposed to do this? And so this was a scripture that, helped me. It says, "Lift up your heads and be of good comfort, for I know of the covenant which ye have made unto me," or the promise that you've made unto me. "And I will covenant with my people and deliver them out of bondage. And I will also ease the burdens which are put upon your shoulders, that even you cannot feel them upon your backs, even while you are in bondage. And this will I do, that ye may stand as a witness of me, that ye may know of a surety that I, the Lord God, do visit my people in their afflictions. And it came to pass that the burdens which were laid upon me were made light. Yea, the Lord did strengthen me, that I could bear up my burdens with ease. And I did submit cheerfully and with patience to all the will of the Lord." So that really, really helped me, because I was like, okay, this is so hard, but the Lord is helping me through it, and I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to be able to look back and want another child. And I do. I want another child already, and it's like, I should wait. So I hope that's helpful to you. If you're in a point where you're struggling or you're worried about struggling, remember that the Lord is there for you. He will deliver you, and He cares for you and your baby, and what you're doing is a good work. It's divine. It's a divine calling. So thank you for working so hard to be a mom, because it does take a lot of work. And I say that in the name of Christ, amen. This is post-edit Camille. So it's kind of crazy, because I made this episode and had planned this episode before Janie had bit me. But now that I am quite literally living through the whole pain of nursing and stuff, my heart goes out to all of you who are really learning to nurse, or who are experiencing pain with nursing for whatever reason. It really is hard. And I wanted to mention a couple of other things that I have learned about nursing that I hadn't really thought about while I was making this episode. And it's just like the emotional attachment to nursing. Not everyone gets it, and you're not a bad mom if you don't get it. It's just some people get it, some people don't. And I happen to be one of the mothers who has become emotionally attached to just the time that I have with Jenny when I nurse her, and how special that is. It's just something that I cherish, and so when it becomes painful, it becomes very discouraging for me. And it's interesting because, when she first bit me, like I said, I kind of yelped and pulled her up and said, "No, you don't bite," and I was kind of really angry at her, even though she didn't know better. And I just remember having this emotional feeling of betrayal. And I think I had said that in this episode, but it's interesting because 3 days later, every time I've nursed her on that side, because again, like I'm the kind of person who just wants to continue nursing, even if I have to go through pain, so that it will heal and get better, and also so that I don't get engorged, because I'm just the person who likes to avoid pumping at all costs, because I hate pumping. It's just not my thing. Anyways, so because of that, each time she's fed, I've been wincing and crying. There's been some crying, and biting my shirt really hard, and probably like making some whining sounds, like it hurts really bad. Anyways, the reason I say this is because today, when I tried to feed her for the third time, because she still nurses quite a bit, even though she's eating like 3-4 meals a day with food, she still nurses probably 5 to 6 times a day. I think it's just something that she loves too. Anyways, I was nursing her in like 11 o'clock-ish, so after her first nap, and she had asked for milk, right? She's like coming up to me wanting milk, so I do the whole routine, and I knew it was going to be my bad side, but I was just like, okay, here we go. And she went to feed, and then before her lips even touched me, she pushed me away and cried and just started crying. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I tried to, give it to her again, and she would not nurse. So I was like, this is so weird. So then I tried to give her the other side, and she didn't want the other side. I was like, maybe she's just not hungry. But then she did it again, and she did it again. So she officially went on a nursing strike this afternoon, and I felt so rejected and defeated. And I started catastrophizing, and I was like, oh my gosh, Janie's never gonna nurse again. This sucks. And I was really, really scared. I had a lot of fear. And I think she could feel that each time I tried to nurse her after she had started to reject me, I was kind of stressed and was like, no, like, feed, and she wouldn't do it. And I started worrying that she wouldn't get the nutrients that she needs, because at this point she's still supposed to be getting nutrients from breast milk. And also I was scared she just would decide to stop nursing. Like, I was scared that she would wean herself because she was afraid to hurt me. And each time I tried to nurse her, she would like ask for it, try to go for the nipple, and then push away. But then eventually, with some convincing, I got her to do my fine side, the side that isn't bit, right? The side that's just fine. And she nursed just fine. So like, okay, it's fine now. She's like done. But then after dinner and it was time for bed, she wouldn't do it again on my bad side, and I'm starting to get engorged. So I let her kind of just sit with me, because she was obviously really hungry. Like, she really wanted breast milk, and she kept coming back to me and asking for it. But then every time I'd try to give her my breast, she just wouldn't take it. So then I kind of just sat there with her and tried to snuggle her a little bit, but let her just kind of play in my lap. Point at the picture of the eagle on the wall, because she loves the eagle. And then we read a book, and then I went and sat in a different chair, and then turned off the lights, got her sleep sack, just continued with the routine, even though normally we do milk and then do all that stuff. But once we'd gotten through the routine, then finally she took the breast. And this time I wanted to make sure that I wasn't wincing, that I wasn't crying, and do my best to help her to feel that I was comfortable nursing her. Because I think what happened is, because she's 11 months old almost, and I really think she's starting to pick up on cues and emotions that we have. There's been times where when I'm sad, not when I'm nursing, but there's been times that I've been sad for something else, and she will literally come up, crawl to me, and give me a hug. Like, she understands that kind of stuff already. And so while I was nursing her this last time, I really wanted to make sure that she knew that I was comfortable nursing her, that it didn't bother me, and that it was a good thing. Because I was worried that on accident I was teaching her that nursing was something bad and that it was hurting mom. And although it won't permanently, right? And I didn't want to accidentally teach her that. So I did my best to like tell her I loved her and play with her hair like I usually do. Because I wasn't doing that when I was in pain. And so it makes sense, right? Like, I went from feeding her the way I used to, with brushing her hair and tugging on her ears and rubbing her arms and legs and stuff, to all of a sudden, like, only touching myself and clenching and wincing and crying. And she probably, after, 3 or 4 times, was like, Mom, like, I won't feed if I'm going to hurt you. So after I did that, she fed the whole way through and fell asleep. So anyways, that is just to say, if you ever experience a nursing strike, it's scary and it's valid to feel afraid. And also remember that it most likely won't last forever. There are things that you can do. You can talk to a lactation consultant to see if there are things that you can try to help persuade them to come back to the breast. Nursing strikes can last for just a couple of hours, or sometimes it can last for weeks, which is really, really hard. And my friend Allie, if you haven't listened to her episode yet, hers is all about her nursing and pumping journey. It's, I think, the second episode that I have. Go check it out. But she talks about how her baby boy had a nursing strike for a long time, and they did a couple things that would help a little bit, but for him it just ended up not working out. So anyways, I don't even know if this was necessary or helpful. It was 8 minutes long. I apologize. But I hope that it was helpful to see that even at 11 months, there might be some problems, and sometimes it's still hard, and it gets better, and it doesn't last forever. Anyways, really, I'm just trying to share everything, because I think the more I share, the better, the more people will feel seen. So anyways, we'll go ahead and finish with my outro. Alrighty, well, if you have a mama that you've been thinking about, go ahead and send them a text, let them know that you love them, and we'll see you next time.